Blog Talk Radio.
Michiamo apura kanu apurai kaitnu. Neye Odwira da medinde Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akan. Akwamuman Amaruka Atifi mu Odwirafo. It means greetings to all apura kani apurai kaitni, meaning African black people. Today is Odwira Day, Purification Day. My name is Odwirafo Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akan. Odwirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in to this special broadcast of Odwira of Purification Day. We typically broadcast 3 times a week on Joda, which is Monday night, for Akan Nana Akousia, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion. We have Odwira Purification on Benada or Abenada, which is Tuesday night. And then we have Egua Marketplace on Awukuda or Akuada, which is Wednesday night. We wanted to do a special broadcast of Odwira of Purification tonight to basically just address and reflect on the life contributions of Nana Akousia Boduaa, Dr. Cress Welsing, who recently made her transition to Asamando, to the realm of the Nsamanto, the ancestresses and ancestors of Afuraka, of her ancestral blood circle, which actually took place this past Miminida. So we'd like to just dedicate this show to her contributions to our community, to the Afurakani community in North America as well as around the world. So we'd like to get into this information. First of all, of course, many people know that Dr. Cress Welsing, a psychiatrist, she was born in Chicago. She came to Washington, D.C. She finished her studies at Howard University. She was a practicing psychiatrist, working with children and so forth, but also with adults. But her major contribution is her theory, and her theory which became practice. Foundation, the Cress theory of color confrontation. Of course, it was, codified in her publication, the ISIS paper. So many people have utilized that publication as a manual to understand critical aspects of what is called racism, white supremacy. So we want to get into this information and reflect on her contribution to our Afurakani community, the African black community. We're doing so from an Akan perspective. Of course, number one, because we are Akan, we want to give some insight, a different approach to addressing the information and seeing the significance and impact of her contributions to us as an Afurakani community. As you see, we utilize the name, the title, and the name Nana Akousia Boduaa as a title for Dr. Welsing. Why do we utilize that title, and what does that have to do with our topic? In the Akan tradition, and we'll put a link in the chat room real quick for individuals who would like to follow this information. In the Akan tradition, you'll find that very often you hear names such as Kwame and Kojo and Ama and Adwoa, Kwesi, Akosua, Esi, Kwajo, and so forth. These are often called day names or dadin names based on the day of the week. They are actually AKRADIN, or soul names, the names of the soul of the individual. In the Akan tradition, this is Afurakani traditions, African traditions across the world, wherever we exist in the world. We recognize the same foundational principle in creation. There's the great mother and the great father. In Akan, the great mother is called Nyamewa, the great father is called Nyame. This is Aminet and Amen from ancient Kemet, the great mother and the great father who comprise the supreme being, who function together as a unit to comprise the supreme being. Before we enter into the world as an Afurakani spirit or an Afurakaini spirit, before we enter or sent into a womb, we are drawn to the great mother and the great father, the supreme being, and given a ka, or ka'et, as it's called in ancient Kemet, a soul, a divine consciousness, a divinity that dwells in the head region, that takes up residence in the head region. It is a male divinity, an obosom, an orisha, a vodou, an ntoro, or ntoro, a divinity, a male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female, taking up residence in the head region of the person. It is called the kra, or the okra in the Akan tradition, okrawa, or okra, female in the Akan tradition. The kra is derived from the ka from ancient Kemet. So this deity is assigned to us pre-incarnation to take up residence in our head region, the head region of our spirit body. Just like you have a physical body and you have a smaller physical body that regulates all of the functions within your physical body, which is in the head region, which is the brain. Your spirit body, which in the Akan tradition is called the sun, that is your spiritual vessel, your spirit body. Within the spirit body, there is a smaller spiritual body that regulates all of the functions. Spirit body, that is the spirit brain. That is called the okra, or the okra in the Akan tradition is called the ka, or the ka'et in ancient Kemet. It's called the ori inu in the Yoruba tradition. It's called the se mido in the Vodun tradition. It's called the chi in the Igbo tradition. It is a divinity, a conscious living entity. It is a colleague of the other divinities, a colleague of the other forces in nature. That deity, a male divinity if you're male, a female divinity if you're female, is directed by Nyamewa and Nyame, the great mother and great father, to take up residence in your head region to guide you throughout the course of your life. Infused within that divinity is the function you are to execute in creation. Just like in your physical brain, in the major fourfold division of your physical brain, you have everything wired within your brain and coded within your brain to regulate your body according to your nature, according to your unique physiological structure, including your DNA and so forth. In the same fashion, spiritually, everything that you are to do, your divine function to execute in creation, is encoded within your spirit brain, encoded within your krawa. In Akan culture, it is called the nkra and nkrabiya, the divine function you are to execute in creation. That simply means that each one of us as Afurakaini people, African Black people, and only Afurakaini people, we are cells within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. Just like you have cells within your body, they are children of the organs and organ systems. The organs and organ systems regulate order within your body. The organs are children of you, the great body. You are the great body. Your body has children, smaller bodies that regulate order within the great body. These are the organs. And the organs give birth to cells. And the cells, as they support the functions of their parent organ or organ system, they're also supporting you, the great body, at the same time. That same structure is manifest in and as creation. Nyamewa and Nyame, the great mother and great father, are the great divine body. Creation is the great divine body of Nyamewa and Nyamewa, Amenet and Amen. The organs within the great divine body are the forces in nature that regulate order within the great divine body. These are the abosom, as they're called in Akan, the orisha, as they're called in the Yoruba tradition, the vodou, as they're called in Fon and Ebe, the arusi, as they're called in the Igbo tradition, the ntoro to the divinities, as they are called in ancient Kemet and Kanat, but also that term ntoro exists in the Akan language as well, as we've shown in our other documents, the exact same term with the exact same meaning, dealing with dead. So these forces in nature are the organs that regulate order in creation. They are the organs within the great divine body of the Supreme Being. We are cells within those organs. We are children of these divinities. So we as cells, when we serve our parent organ, then we're serving the whole great divine body, Aminet and Amen, Nyamewa, Nyame, at the same time. Just like your organs have specific functions, the cells support those functions. Your organ systems have specific functions, your cells support those functions. The immune system cells, for example, support immune system functions. They are part of that functionary entity within the body. And the immune system cells support immune system functions. They are supporting and functioning and serving the whole great body at the same time. So when we talk about a divine function in creation, it is based on what kind of cells we are within the great divine body. If you are an immune system cell within the great divine body, then you are encoded with immune system functions that will manifest in your life as inclinations towards regulating order, restoring order, destroying disorder and defects when they manifest in different aspects of self and community. Therefore, you're naturally drawn towards military activities, naturally drawn towards traditional policing activities, martial activities, and so forth, because you are an immune system cell, children of the immune system divinity within the great divine body. If you're part of the excretory system, like the renal system within the great divine body, your renal system, the kidneys, and the ureters and bladder and so forth, they regulate fluid balance in the body, regulate mineral balance in the body. An excretory system excreting toxins to preserve the integrity of the system. That is a healing type function within the body, regulating fluid balance, regulating mineral balance. If you are a child of that renal system within the great divine body, which is governed by the female abosom, Akua and Akan, Nebet Het in ancient Kemet, as she's called Agberu in the Yoruba tradition, and Koni Koni in Vodun. If you're a child of that aspect of the great divine body, then you're naturally inclined towards those kinds of activities, excreting toxins, maintaining and restoring mineral balance and fluid balance within the body of the community. So you're naturally inclined towards certain kinds of healing functions. You may be involved in some kind of herbalism, natural medicine, alternative medicine, but natural medicine, priestesshood, and so forth. So whatever kind of cell you are within the great divine body that is wired within your krawa, your soul, your divine consciousness. So in the Akan tradition, we recognize that reality, just like all Afurakani people recognize that reality, that we are encoded with a specific function to execute in creation pre-incarnation. We go before Inyamewa and Inyame, or Olokun and Oloron, or Mawu and Lisa, Komosu and Chupu, Katieleo and Kolotiolo, as they are called in the Senufo tradition. We go before the great mother and great father. We are infused with a soul, a divine consciousness, a divinity, a male or female divinity that governs our spiritual head. And once that divinity installs itself within our spiritual head, then we are sent back into the ancestral realm to await a womb assignment. And then our ancestresses and ancestors, our Nananom Umsamako, usher us into a womb of one of our descendants, into a specific blood circle, and then eventually 40 plus weeks later or prior, we are born into the world. So we come into the world with a specific culture, because a culture is a way of life, and that way of life is rooted in the specific abosom, the divinity that governs your head, and specific function you are to execute in creation. And that is tempered and nuanced by the energy coming from your patriclan and matriclan as well. So you have a divinity that governs your head, but then it's also nuanced and given further definition by the specific patriclan and matriclan energy that blends to bring you forward as well. So you come into the world with a culture of specific inclination and function to execute in creation, wired within your crop, your soul, your divine consciousness. So when a child is born in Akan tradition on a specific day, because of the agreement that we have forged as Akan people with the Abosom, with Inyamewa and Inyame, and with the Abosom, they make sure to send the child through on the day based on the divinity that governs the solar, lunar, or planetary body that regulates that day. The 7-day week in Akhan culture is governed by the solar, lunar, or planetary body that governs that particular day. And therefore, there are abosom, forces of nature, divinity, that animate these solar, lunar, and planetary bodies. So therefore, the specific day that you are born on is an indication of the divinity you were assigned to pre-incarnation. That same divinity that animates that specific celestial body will send you through into the world and make sure you are born on their particular day. So, for example, if you were born on Awukuda, which is Wednesday, the day or da of Awuku, the divinity Awuku, the planet that is animated by Awuku is called Aku, which is the white star spring called Mercury. That spirit that animates that planet, you were assigned to that divinity pre-incarnation, and therefore you will come out on his day. So when you come out on Awukuda, so-called Wednesday, everybody in the community knows this child was born on Awukuda, on Wednesday. That means he was assigned to Nana Awuku pre-incarnation. This is why he came out on that day. That means that his cry is governed by Nana Awuku, and therefore he will be called Kweku, that will be his Pradin. Kwe or Akwa means servant or subject of. Kwaku or Kweku is the servant of Aku, and so forth. And all of the days of the week in the Akan tradition are governed by that principle. The abosom that governs the solar, lunar, or planetary body that animates that specific day of the week. When children are born on that day of the week, that is an indication of what took place pre-incarnation. So we have, for example, Joda, which is Monday. Males born on Joda called Kwadjo. Females born on Monday called Adwoa. You have on Sunday the day Kwesi or Awusida. Males born on Sunday are called Kwesi or Kwasi. Females born on Sunday Akousia or Esti, and there are many different variations. So as you will see, the name we utilize affectionately for Dr. Welsing is Akousia Boduaa, and you'll see that that name is dealing with Akousia. Also, Esti is another variation of that. Is dealing with the divinity, the female divinity that governs that particular day. So let's look at who this female divinity that governs that particular day and that particular energy is and what her functions are, and see how that relates to Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. See if that energy is connected to the kind of activities and the kind of information and the kind of contribution that she gave to our community and will continue to support the community with from Asamado, from the ancestral realm. So we're going to look at one of our publications from the AKRADINBOSOM page. It is talking about the divinity Adwoa. She is also called Esi. And as we said on Monday is Joda, the day, Da of Adjo and Adwoa. So when this spiritual force on the female side, when she's operating through the moon, she's called Adwoa. When she's operating in connection with the sun, she's called Esi, or different variations of that side. So we're going to look at this information and see what her characteristics are and see how they're connected to Dr. Welsing, because she's connected to this divinity. If she was Akan, she would have been connected to this divinity based on the day that she was born. So let's see what these characteristics. So we talked about Adwoa, when she operates through the moon. She's called Adwoa. Jo means to cool, to calm, to quiet, to be at peace, rest. It's also a title of respect. It also means root. It can also mean Awoa. A variation of that is mother, childbirth, labor, nativity, to engender, beget, generate, procreate. bring forth. It can also mean to cut into pieces, to separate. So what does that have to do? So Adwoa, Bosom, Adwoa, the female divinity Adwoa, is a spirit force who has a regulatory function in creation. She regulates the functions and operations of the other forces in nature. The Oria, the sun, sends its energy to Asase, earth, heating the planet while activating its atmosphere. The Bosom, the moon, also called the Asurane, receives and retains the energy of the sun, of the Oria. The resultant energy of this process, including moonlight, in concert with the gravitational force of the moon, affects the increase in water levels, the tides, and cools Asase, earth. Joda, the day of Adwoa, is the day of the Asurane, of the moon. The cooling effect of this celestial body on the atmosphere of Asase, of earth, regulating the temperature, and its cooling effect on the surface of Asase, increasing the water levels, is what gives this major abosom operating through the moon the title Adwoa or Ajo, the root of which means to cool. Then you have Awo, a title of Adwoa, means mother, as in one's own mother. It can mean childbirth or labor. Talking about the great mother of conception, labor, and childbirth. It is the coolness of the womb that allows the baby to develop properly. It is the coolness within the male reproductive organs which facilitates the readiness of the sperm cells to fertilize, wo, meaning to beget. Without the requisite coolness, jo, there is no fertilization, no embryogenesis, so you need that coolness so that you can give birth to living beings as well as give birth to specific innovation. Excessive heat in the womb area disrupts the development of the fetus. Excessive heat kills mature sperm cells. Adwoa, as Awo, governs the uterus and the vagina structure of the Afro-Kaini female. Her cool energy allows us to beget, engender, in order that we may become parents, Awofo, and allows the woman to maintain the life of the ova and spermatozoa after fertilization. Now, we're talking about begetting children, but also begetting ideas. The coolness, the receptivity, the introspection, intuitiveness necessary to delve deep into the dark waters, delve deep into the wisdom to draw out what needs to be drawn out, to learn what needs to be learned so that you can give birth. Well, you need that coolness, Jo, the root of Adwoa, in order to engage that process. Now, we're going to get into another title of Adwoa. The term Jo means to cry aloud, to lament, to wail. When the body is overheated, the body sweats or cries in order to cool itself down and maintain a balancing temperature. When the spirit is overheated, the body also releases water to cool down the body and release the intense nervous energy in order to keep the spiritual temperament balanced. This also contributes to physiological balance. The activation of the pain center in the brain happens physiologically and spiritually, including emotionally, indication that disorder is upsetting the physiological and or spiritual balance. The energy release surges to the head in order to activate the pain center as a warning system to the individual. Yet the surge of energy is balanced out by the release of energy in the same region via the tear duct. Crying, lamenting, wailing can be an explosive release of energy which would otherwise cause a physiological and or a spiritual implosion within the individual. Such an implosion, especially repeated over time, can lead to physical illness, stress, heart attack, stroke, etc., and spiritual illness, depression, insanity, suicide, etc. The release of water, which is cooling, and sound waves, wailing, so that cooling is Jo. Sound waves of wailing, to cry, lament, to wail, also Jo. It's an essential act of healing. The first responders to pain and suffering are water and sound. Tears are regenerative and cleansing. The water filling the eyes washes away the debris so that we can see clearly where mistakes have been made and correct them. The sound is corrective. The vibrations work to reroute and recalibrate the life force energy in a manner that begins the restoration of the body and spirit. Adwoa through the function of Jo, to lament. Well, is just the great healeress. She brings the energy that resolves conflict. She negotiates the needs of the individual cell, organ, or organ system with the needs of the entire body structure for the purpose of maintaining balance, affecting healing. She negotiates the needs of the Afurakaini individual and his or her relationship to the whole of the Afurakaini family, clan, nation, and or circumstance in order to maintain balance, affect healing in the course of everyday living. She negotiates the desire of the Sum, the spirit with the pull of the Akra, the divine consciousness or the soul, in order to maintain balance, restore alignment so that the Afurakaini individual can fulfill his Nkrabia divine function, his or her Nkrabia divine function in creation. This negotiation leading to reconciliation, balance, is the nature of healing. So already, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing was born on, and the divinity that governs that day and that energy, we're looking at specific functions that she executes. To cry aloud, Jo, the root of Adwoa, to cry aloud, to lament, to wail. When someone sees disorder manifest, then they cry out, they speak out, they lament, they wail, they sound the alarm. And then they bring that cooling energy, that healing energy. The first responders to pain and suffering is water or sound. She cools down, goes into that introspective mode, that intuitive mode, goes under, goes into the water, goes deep within the deep source of wisdom to draw out what we need so that we can begin that healing process. She goes deep within the waters of consciousness so that she can draw it out, and she sounds the alarm. Jo, to cool, goes into the coolness, introspection, intuitive nature, and then she, Jo, cries out a lament or sounds the alarm, speaks out, teaches the people. The tears are regenerative and cleansing. The water filling the eyes washes the waste, the debris, so that we can see clearly where mistakes have been made and correct them. The sound is corrective. So when she speaks, she begins to correct. When you have those sound waves that are so strong and powerful, someone can sing at such a pitch that they can break a glass with the sound waves in and of themselves. The sound, the Jo, the crying, the lamenting, the wailing, or the sounding of the alarm, the speech, the good speech, the corrective speech, that sound is corrected. The vibrations work to reroute and recalibrate the life force energy in a manner that begins the restoration of the body and the spirit. So as a psychiatrist, and her going in depth and studying what is the nature of our spiritual disalignment as a people, what has taken place. Clearly what we learned from psychiatrists and psychologists in the schools of psychiatry, in the university system, is not getting to the root of the problem. Again, the term Jo also means root. Just like Ntini means root in Akan, but the other word for root is Jo. So Jo is the root. Jo also means to cry out, lament, or wail. So she goes to the root. She gets cool, introspective, going inside, going into the coolness of those waters like the full moon, causing the tides to rise, so that once we become full of water, become more introspective, become more reflective, internalized, and so forth, introverted, now we can go deep within that knowledge, grab what we need to grab from the ancestresses and ancestors, from the Abosom, and then bring that information out from the deep up into the surface. So the schools of psychiatry would not allow her to engage that process. So she has to go to her ancestral reservoir of culture, of wisdom, to go deep within those waters. And once she went deep within those waters, the coolness of those waters, the Jo, the coolness, she reached, and then she was able to grasp what she needed, and then she spoke out, Jo, to cry or lament. Lament the condition of our people, but then the cry, the lament, is also a recalibration of energy. The sound waves begin to recalibrate and reroute the life force energy so that the person can become in alignment with order. It begins the restoration of the body and the spirit. She thus becomes the great healeress. She brings the energy that resolves the conflict, resolving conflict between what we have been taught and what we are experiencing, the lies we have been taught and what we are truly experiencing. She resolves that conflict by bringing forth reality, bringing forth truth. She negotiates the needs of the individual cell, organ, or organ system with the needs of the entire body structure for the purpose of maintaining balance, affecting healing. We begin to understand the root, Joe, of our issues, then the coolness, Joe, reflection, sober analysis allows us to begin to heal and recalibrate ourselves. And this is the process that she went through, going beyond conventional pseudo-psychology and psychiatry, but going back to her ancestral root. And therefore, our people individually, as well as our people in a collective, can begin to become recalibrated. We also talk about this notion of birth. We talk about this notion of Ajo having the title Awo, meaning mother, but also meaning the great mother of conception, labor, and childbirth. The coolness of the womb that allows the baby to develop properly. It is the coolness within the male reproductive organ. It's also the coolness within the womb that allows for that process of fertilization to take place. So once again, going into that coolness, that deep well of consciousness, sober analysis, going into the source that facilitates conception, labor, childbirth, not just birthing children, but birthing these ideas deep from within inside. When you look within the womb, of course, and you're talking about Adwoa, and she's governing the moon, causing the tides to rise and affecting the rising of the tides and so forth. Of course, the child is living in those primordial waters. And eventually that amniotic sac will break and the child will arise from the primordial waters, just like the primordial earth covered by water. But when Ra and Ra'et, the creator and creatress, Inyokumpon and Inyokunton, Odumare, Oshumare, Dad, Idahuedo, begin to move within the primordial earth, volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor cause a portion of the ocean floor to rise up and burst through the surface of the water. That is the first Ka, or Ka'et, the first raised land. And when Ra and Ra'et move through that first raised land, they are called Akura and Akura'et, the creator moving through the flesh, the matter, Akura and Akura'et. And when Akura moves through the Ka, it is called Akura Ka, the land called Akura, where Africa comes from. Akura'et Ka, the land of the creatress, Akura Ka, the land of the creator. Just as the primordial earth rises up out of the primordial waters, the child rises up out of and breaks through that amniotic sac from the primordial waters to be born. But prior to that, of course, the child was gestating. Prior to that, there was a conception. Conception, gestation, labor, and childbirth. When Dr. Welsing, Nana Akousia Boduaa, decided to look into the root, Joe, of the problem, look into the root of our condition, what is really undergirding the behaviors that we manifest, the self-destructive behaviors that we manifest, and what do we need to recalibrate ourselves. She's going deep within those primordial water to draw forth from the Joe, the root, what we need, so that she can give birth, our woe, to that which we need to utilize within our own selves, individually, as well as the community, so we can restore ourselves to who we truly are. So this is what we're dealing with. These are all titles and functions of the divinity that govern the day upon which she was born. Then we talk about Adai, which also means, is a title of the divinity, a sacred praise name of the divinity, Adai. Adai can mean the sleep state or resting period. It also means the ritual state. So that's a title of someone born connected to this divinity. The sleep state is also the resting state. It is also a ritual space. When you move into that ritual space, very similar to going to sleep. Your body's laying in a dark room without movement, color, sound, and so forth, but you are experiencing other entities. When you're in the dream state, you're experiencing activity, you're engaged in activity all throughout that time. In the same fashion, when someone makes their transition, the body is laying in the grave and so forth, but the spirit is interacting with the ancestresses and ancestors. This is why in our Akan tradition, we say that if you would like to understand what Asamando is like, the ancestral realm is like, consider the Adai, or the dream state, because you're going into a different realm. The same is true of the ritual state. When someone engages spirit possession or spirit communication, they leave the physical realm and they go into that Adai state, the ritual state. The sleep state is similar to the ritual state. It's similar to the transitional state after death and so forth. You're going into the realm of the spirit, the ancestresses and ancestors, the Nsamako, the realm of the Abosom, the forces in nature. This is why this is a title for a person born on Adwoa, connected to the Abosom, the divinity Adwoa, because when you go into that deep primordial root, you're going into that ritual space. You're leaving what behind the physical space. You're leaving behind what is conventional. You're going into the spiritual state, the ritual space, the ritual time, sacred time, and so forth, so that you can draw forth from the forces in nature that undergird creation. When you can align with the forces that actually animate creation, that regulate order in creation, because they're the embodiment of divine order in creation, you can extract from their functioning, you can attune to that order, you can extract from that order, and therefore when you come back to the physical state, you can replicate that order that you extracted directly from them, and then you can reestablish a system, a society, and innovation, and so forth. So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing goes into that ancestral reservoir of energy, of culture, coming from the ancestresses and ancestors in that cool state, going into the primordial waters, going to the root, going through the Adai state, so she can conceive, go through labor, and eventually give birth to these concepts and ideas that will help to free our people, help to recalibrate our people. This is all based on this. All of these characteristics are based on the kind of person who was born under the governance of this divinity that she was born under if she was Akan. The term Jo also means to cut into pieces. So we already said it means to cool. It also means to cry, lament, or wail, dealing with healing and so forth, releasing those sound vibrations to recalibrate that energy and bring attention to the pain that has been manifest so that healing can take place. But then Jo also means to cut into pieces. And when we talk about cut into pieces, we're not just talking about breaking things, but we're talking about dissection. We're talking about delineation. We're talking about analysis in a harmonious sense. So when you talk about Jo dealing with cutting into pieces, not only does she get these ideas, but she goes deep within this analysis and dissects the misinformation coming from the white snare offspring, and also dissects and properly delineates and examines and puts forward the various components of the cosmology that gives birth to the theory as well as the practice that she put forward in a harmonious fashion. If you don't have the capacity to quote-unquote cut into pieces, Jo, or analyze, dissect, and examine, engage the process of Akwamu and Akan, which means critical examination, then you're going to have a problem down the line. Certain things will not add up down the line. You won't be able to see and predict and show people a proper path towards development, towards wholeness, holistic understanding, because you haven't been able to critically examine what you're talking about. So not only does she give birth to this reality, give birth to these concepts that will free our people, but she can convey them, she can articulate them. If you notice some people may be, for example, artists who can express themselves and give birth to all kinds of art and so forth, but if they were asked to explain or teach a class on how to put this forward, they can't tell you how they did it, they just know it came out of it. but then you have some people who can give birth to these concepts, give birth to these ideas, give birth to these innovations, give birth to the concepts that will refashion and reform our people, but they can also articulate every step of the way. So that if you have an issue with a certain aspect of these concepts and certain aspects of a new way of life, a new way of functioning, they can articulate and show the interlinkages, the interconnections between what was done in the past, the misinformation you've been given, and how the proper concept, the proper ideology, the proper understanding can recalibrate. Of course, Nana Akousia Boduaa, she had that, of course, capacity to clearly articulate and delineate, quote unquote, Joe, cut into pieces, dissect, examine these issues, and put them forward in a manner that not only people who are trained in the sciences, psychology and psychiatry and so forth could understand in that nomenclature, but also anybody in our community, from children to adults. All of these things have to do with a person born on that particular day, carrying that particular energy. And then, of course, the term Adwoa or Adria, also in the Akan tradition, means a seat or a throne. Adria is directly related to Adwoa. In the Akan culture, the Oria, the sun, often represents the Ohini, the king, while the Bosom or the Osurani, the moon, often represents the Ohima, the queen mother. And we talk about the Akan Ebe, a proverb, Ohima Ye Bosom, the queen mother is the moon. Akan culture is matricircular, so-called matrilineal. The kingship is inherited and transmitted through the female blood circle, so-called bloodline. This is one of the reasons why the Adria, the throne of the Ohima, the queen mother, is senior to that of the Ohini of the king. Now, Adwoa represents the maintenance of civilization. This speaks to matricircular or matrilineal succession. The queen mother's throne being the foundation or the root. Jo, remember Jo, the root of Adwoa means root. The queen mother's throne, the Adria, the throne, is the foundation or the root, Jo, of the nation's continuity. It is the seat of power. Family inheritance, including land rights, are passed through the female blood circle. The Akan say all power emanates from the land. The land rights are passed through the seat of power, which is the female Adria, which is the seat or throne. Adwoa is the Adria. Adwoa, the person born on Joda under the divinity Adwoa, she, Adwoa, is the Adria. Adwoa is the throne. Adwoa is also Adjo, meaning root, that which has the capacity to ground, just as the ovum grounds the sperm cell in the process of fertilization. So this is someone who has the root. She can ground you. Now, we talk about the structure of the throne that you see, the so-called Akan stools or Asante stools and so forth. You see the carved stools with the crescent on the top and so forth. The whites and offspring call them stools because that's a derogatory term. Instead of saying we have thrones, they wanted to say we had stools and only they had thrones. Of course, that's nonsensical. So we talk about the structure of that seat. The Adria in Akan culture is most often the form of a crescent moon on the top. The terms Adria and Chwa, meaning to separate, to execute, are related. We're talking about separation, apportionment, dividing up, cutting up, not only into pieces, talking about land rights and matrilineal succession and so forth, and inheritance, but also, as we said, to articulate, to examine, to delineate, so we can bring greater meaning and clarity to understand what we're dealing with culturally and spiritually. Now, when we talk about Adwoa operating through the moon, has a regulatory function in creation. She provides the coolness necessary for fertilization and embryogenesis. That includes not only for children, but also for ideas, concepts that we need to be birthed. She has the capacity to utilize that coolness to go deep within those primordial waters to draw forth those concepts directly from the ancestresses and ancestors, the Nana Akousia, to bring them back to us. She goes through the Adai state, the ritual state, to get to the ancestresses and ancestors so they influence her, so she can bring back that information to us so we can recalibrate ourselves. She has that capacity based on the energy she's born under. The great mother of childbirth and labor in the Aakhuamuman body, as well as the divine birth house, divine birth canal of creation. She governs the ritual state, co-ruler with Awusi in the spirit realm. She maintains civilization. Adwoa is the divinity, the great mother, the great birth canal, maintaining the continuity of civilization, regulatory order. She heals through the release of water and sound. She holds the keys to transmission of inheritance and thus authority in families and in society. Adwoa is the seat, the throne, the foundation, the root, Joe, the seat, throne, foundation, the root of inherited executive authority. When we talk about inherited executive authority, someone who is authoritative because it's rooted in their ancestry, through their blood circle. They have a command of specific issues. They have a command of certain aspects of society. They are appointed by birth through the nature of their energy complex to give certain kinds of information, direction, instruction, maintain a regulatory order within society. That's inherited executive authority deriving directly from the divinity Adwoa, which governs such a person. Of course, such a person will have a command and an executive authority of specific issues, especially those which were birthed from her direct ancestresses and ancestors. As we can see, all of these characteristics are very reflective of Nana Akousia Boduaa, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. But we go further because one of the other titles of an Adwoa, the divinity Adwoa in our Akan tradition, is Esi, when she's operating in connection with the Oriya, in connection with the sun. And when she's operating in connection with the sun, even the term Esi, appoint, to set, to establish. It is also the root of the term Esi, which means throne, chair, and so forth. And of course, in English, that becomes seat or set, which is a throne, a chair, and so forth. But it also means to set, to appoint, to establish. Talking about executive authority, once again, the seat, the throne of rulership, to establish, to appoint executive authority. This is why when someone is born on the day governed by this divinity, when she's operating in connection with the sun, they're called Akousia, or also a different title in the Fanti dialect, for example, is Esi. And one of the praise names is Bodria, and Bodria literally means the animal's tail. So when you see kings and queen mothers and they have a quote-unquote wisp or an animal's tail and they're walking by and they're swinging the animal's tail, that's a symbol of authority, a symbol of executive authority. So someone born in connection with this divinity, they are called Bodria, the animal's wisp or the animal's tail, representing executive authority. And of course, so when we say Akousia or Esi or Akousia, Bodria, this is a female born under this divinity. Akousia, she's a servant of this divinity, a child of this divinity that we've been talking about. But she's also Bodria, the animal's wisp or the animal's tail. She wipes away disorders, destroys disorder with that tail, wipes away debris, discontent, disorder, and only manifests harmony, wiping and utilizing that tail, wiping away criminality, and so forth. Executive authority. So, who is this divinity in ancient Kemet? The divinity in ancient Kemet is Auset. Auset is also called, in the Coptic dialect, which is a late Kemet dialect, she's called Esi, and you'll see that in the language. So when the Akan calls her Esi, and a praise name is Akousia, which is Akwo or Akwa, which means servant, Esi, or Esia, the servant, Akko or Akwa of Esi. Akousia means the servant of Esi, and sometimes the females just call Esi. That means the person is born under the governance of Auset. Another title of Auset when she's operating through the moon is Odwirafo in ancient Kemet, or Uchawu. Uchawu in ancient Kemet becomes Adwoa in Akan, and Adwoa. This is where we get Adwoa from. In ancient Kemet, the right eye of the sun, right eye of Ra, or Heru is the sun, the left eye is the moon. And the moon is called Adwo or Ujo, and Uchoat for the female, and the male and female forces operating through the moon are Alsar and Auset. They're called Ucho and Uchoat. In ancient Kemet, they're called Adjo and Adwoa and Akan. They're operating in connection with the sun, in connection with Ra and Ra'et. They're called Awusi or Asi, and then Akousia, which is the servant Akor of Esi, or sometimes just Esi. So she's Adwoa, but also Esi. That is very important because we already talked about her various characteristics, her functions in creation, how those functions manifest in creation. But of course, we're talking about our ancient ancestral culture. We show the term Esi in Coptic. It manifests as Esi in Akhan, the same divinity with the same name, with the same functions in creation, operating through the same celestial bodies in creation. She's called Otwat in ancient Kemet, talking about the divinity animating the moon. And she's called Adwoa in Akan, still same name, same function when she's operating through Joda, the day of the moon, the cool day, the root day, and so forth. So when we talk about Auset, we're talking about the same divinity with her same title, unbroken. And when you look all across the continent, you find the same thing. If Dr. Welsing was Akan because of the day that she was born, she would have been born under the governance of this divinity. And of course, when we look at her characteristics, that's proven, that's borne out, just as we've gone through those characteristics. Her entire life is a reflection of that. But it goes even further, because when you look at the image that we use for the show itself, we use an image of the so-called vulture. In ancient Kemet, it's called Mut. Mut means vulture. Mut also means mother. Mut can also mean death. But that great vulture is the great mother divinity with the expansive wingspan. You'll see the queen mothers wearing the vulture headdress prominently in the so-called 18th dynasty, New Kingdom, so-called New Empire, wearing that vulture headdress. Then, of course, Nekabet is the great vulture divinity, the great mother divinity. When we talk about Mut, the great mother, and then we show an image of Nana Akousia Boduaa, the one with that executive authority, child of Auset, and then we show the image of the front cover of her book. And of course, the image of the front cover of her book and the name of the book is the ISIS paper. And the image that she has on the front cover of the book is the spelling of the name, quote unquote, ISIS, which is actually Auset. And she has the Medutu, the hieroglyph spelling out the name Auset. So it turns out that she was born on the day of Auset. She carries the energy of Auset, and she wrote a book called not the ISIS papers, but the Auset, or the SC Akousia paper. And of course, papers comes from the term papyrus. So the ISIS papers are really the Auset or the SC papyrus. So if you look at the SC or the Auset papyrus, then we're going to look at what is Auset and her function in the cosmology of ancient Kemet. And what is that association? When you look at what took place with Alsar and Auset, and Alsar is killed. And when Alsar is killed, Auset is forced out of rulership temporarily. And when she's forced out of rulership temporarily, she becomes like a quote-unquote maroon, escaping from imprisonment of Set and his followers. Eventually, she finds the body of her husband that was, murdered, was killed. And she unites her with his. And she becomes impregnated by Auset, and she will eventually give birth to Heru, and then she will hide Heru within northern Kemet, in the Ha-Met, or the land of the north, in the Delta region, in the papyrus swamp. And Heru will be developing within the papyrus swamps, and Auset is there nourishing him within the papyrus swamps, within that region, within the north. So Auset is in the papyrus. Auset is in the quote-unquote papers. And she's nourishing the child that will become the revolutionary that will reestablish order and so forth in creation. When we talk about Auset and talk about the story of Auset and Heru, we're going to get into a specific quote from Dr. Welsing, and then we're going to pull certain things together. So her functional definition of racism, white supremacy, racism equals white supremacy equals apartheid. As a black behavioral scientist and practicing psychiatrist, my own functional definition of racism, white supremacy is as follows. Racism, white supremacy is the local and global power system and dynamic structure maintained by persons who classify themselves as white, whether consciously or subconsciously determined, which consists of patterns of perception, logic, symbol formation, thought, speech, action, and emotional response as conducted simultaneously in all areas of people activity, economic, education, entertainment, labor, law, politics, religion, sex, and war, for the ultimate purpose of white genetic survival and to prevent white genetic annihilation on planet Earth, a planet which is the vast and overwhelming majority of people are classified as non-white by white-skinned people, and all of the non-white people are genetically dominant in terms of skin coloration compared to the genetic recessive white-skinned people. So this is Auset delineating, cutting into pieces, articulating a definition, defining, delineating, examining what racism, white supremacy is. That's Joe, to cut into pieces, to delineate, to expound, to examine. She's going to the root of the issue, Joe, meaning the root. And she talks about white genetic survival and white genetic annihilation. This is a child of Auset, talking about why the whites and their offspring in this day and time, especially over the past couple of 100 years, recognizing that they're surrounded around the world by non-white people. So they're fearful and they have that anxiety. They want to prevent white genetic annihilation coming from Auset. So if we look at Auset, and we talked about Auset connecting with Auset, even after he, quote unquote, was killed and his spirit came to hers, and they still fused their energy together. She was able to draw forth his seed and conceive Heru and place him in the papyrus, Heru, in the papyrus swamps and so forth. What did the whites and their offspring have to say about the story of Auset, and Heru? And then what did our people have to say about the story of Auset, and Heru? So let's look quickly at that. If you look at what the whites and their offspring have to say about, for example, Ptah, I'm going to read something very quickly from what they had to say. And we just want to read it quickly because we want to give you a specific link to what's taking place and why Auset, a child of Auset, a child of Esi, Akousia, had to bring this information out about white genetic annihilation, their fear of white genetic annihilation and how it manifests, not just recently, but in the past. So when Plutarch talks about the story of, quote-unquote, Osiris and Isis, there's a specific section where he talks about what happened when she was discovering the different parts of his body after his body was carved up by Set and scattered. So let's pull that section out real quick. And you can find it in a number of different places, and we want to pull it up real quick here. Just give me a second. Okay. And when she's despairing because Set finds the body of Alsar, he carves the body up into different pieces, 14 different pieces, and scatters the pieces all over the country. Then Auset searches for the pieces of the body of Alsar unceasingly until she finds them, and then she creates shrines in every place that she finds a piece of his body because she wants to reconstitute him and so forth. But this is what Plutarch says about quote-unquote Isis and Osiris. He says, we are told, moreover, that notwithstanding all her search, Isis was never able to recover the privy member of Osiris, talking about the phallus, which having been thrown into the Nile immediately upon its separation from the rest of the body had been devoured by the Lepidottus and the Phagris and the Oxyrhynchus fish, which of all others, for this reason, the Egyptians have in more especial avoidance. In order, however, to make some amends for the loss, Isis consecrated the phallus made in imitation of it and instituted a solemn festival to its memory, which is even to this day observed by the Egyptians. That's, of course, what Plutarch said. Now, in reality, that's totally false. Some of our people have repeated what Plutarch said. Now, the story of someone being castrated and then their phallus being thrown in the river and being consumed by a fish, a Nile River fish, so to speak, that comes from the tale of the two brothers going back to the Middle Empire, talking about the two brothers Anpu and Bata. And even though their story is in some ways similar to the story of Alsar and Set, in that particular instance, that is a totally different story. But of course, the whites and their offspring are misinformed. In the text of Kemet, every part of the body of Alsar is found, including the Ka, which is the title of the phallus in ancient Kemet. Ka means soul. Ka also means phallus. Ka also means raised land. Ka'et means vagina. Ka'et also means soul, female. Ka'et also means raised land or hill. So the Ka, in this sense, the phallic member, it was found by Auset in our traditional text. And it was buried at the sanctuary of the sacred Bennu bird, the Het Bennu, the house or sanctuary or shrine or temple of the Bennu bird. The Bennu bird is that solar bird, the heart of Ra, the heart of Atem. It is the bird of resurrection and restoration, talking about rebirth and rejuvenation and return. So the phallus or the Ka of Alsar was buried at Het Bennu. Even going back a couple of thousand years, the whites and their offspring are already seeking to change the story around. They're already fearful of white genetic annihilation by the great black god. Alsar is called Kam-Ur, the great black one. And of course, the king is representative of the nation. So the great black one, Kam-Ur, also represents the great black nation. When Alsar is in the coffin, the great black one is in the coffin, and he's concealed in the coffin and picked up by the followers of Set and thrown into the water. And once the coffin ends up on the shore, then the coffin is opened up and Set carves up the body of the great black one and scatters it all over the place. Of course, the desert dwellers, the red ones, the reddish ruddy ones, capture the great black nation and place them in coffins, so-called slave ships, and throw them in the water. And once they arrive on the other shore, the coffins are opened up and the people are cut up, auctioned off, and scattered all over the place. This is what we're dealing with. However, Auset reconstitutes. She was forced out of rulership by Set, but she escaped into the marshes, into the north. She escaped into the papyrus region. She found the body of Alsar. She reconnected with him, pulled his seed from him spiritually, and gave birth to Heru in the swamp in the north. So you have in North America the people who escaped from the plantation, escaped into the swamps, like in Dismal Swamp in Virginia and South Carolina, escaped into the swamps to establish maroon society, independent. They reconnected with those who had died, quote unquote, on the plantation culturally, and resurrected them, freed them from the plantations, and went back to the sovereign lands in the swamp, and reconnected with them and reconstituted with them and gave birth to those in the swamps who will become the revolutionaries and resolutionaries who would end up waging war against the whites and offspring and ending enslavement in North America, as well as Central America, South America, the Caribbean. It was our people engaged in ancestral religion who waged war against the whites and their offspring, not just in Haiti, not just in Palmares, but also in North America. The Gullah Wars, where our people were waging war against the United States Army for over 50 years, was the precedent which gave birth to the Civil War. It was because of us killing the whites and their offspring that we forced an end to enslavement and forced them to accept abolition and emancipation. The Akousia, or the Auset, the Essees, escaping into the northern swamps, connecting with those who were once carved up and deceased, so to speak, or reconstituting them so they could give birth to the revolutionaries. They were able to do so. And because they were able to do so, the revolutionaries and resolutionaries were able to wage war against the whites and their offspring. The whites and offspring understood that reality. They understood that reality in the past. So they will change the story and say the phallus or the ka of Alsar was cut off and never found. They didn't want it to be found, so Plutarch said it wasn't found. Is it true? No, it's a lie. In the ancient text, it was found and placed in the house of the Benuberg for resurrection, rejuvenation, and the restoration of our blood circle, our lineage, patriclan and matriclan. But they wanted to put forth the notion that it was not found. So they say it was cut away and eaten away. This is when they're talking about white genetic annihilation. They fear the black man Ka, or his member that could genetically annihilate them. So even 2,000 years ago, when Plutarch is writing about Alsar, the great black god, he wants to get rid of the great black phallus of the great black god because he fears white genetic annihilation from the great black god and the people who are represented by the great black god even at that early date. And it continues even today. It plays out in the text and so forth. But when you look at the actual text, and you look at one of the quote-unquote hymns to Alsar and talking about Auset and what she was doing and how she was searching for him, not Plutarch's version, but our people, the original version, where she says, when they're talking about Alsar, says, his crown pierces heaven. He is a brother of the starred divinities, the guide of everyone, operative by command and word, favored by the company of the divinities, great, beloved of the great and lesser divinities. His sister has made his protection, talking about Auset, driving away foes, driving away criminals, driving away disorder, turning back evil happenings, uttering the words with the power of her mouth, perfect of tongue, not erring of speech, operating by decree and word, Auset, the strong one, the avenger of her brother. This is Akousia, Esi, the child of Esi, the child of Auset, the defender of her brother, recognizing the white and offspring feared white genetic annihilation. So she comes forward with the power of her mouth, uttering the words with the power of her mouth, perfect of tongue, articulating our issues so that she can protect our people, not erring of speech, operating by decree and word, Auset, the strong one, the avenger of her brother. She sought him without weariness. She went round about this earth. In sorrow, not alighted she without finding him. She made light with her feathers, making wind with her wings. She made the cries or the laments at the funeral bier of her brother. She raised up from inactivity the one with the still heart. She extracted she made the air, which is Heru. She suckled the child in solitariness. Not was known his place where she reared him. His hand is mighty within the house of Geb, the earth divinity. The divinities rejoice. They rejoice at the coming of the son of Alsar, who established apart, whose word is absolute, the son of Auset, the heir of Alsar. Gather to him the sovereign princes of Ma'at, the deities, and Neb Erjer himself, and the masters of Ma'at assemble with him. This is what took place, of course, in ancient Kemet. This is, of course, what takes place with a child of Etsi, where she speaks with those sacred words, where she speaks with power, perfect of speech, protecting her brother, the great black one, so that she can give birth and conceive what needs to be conceived, so she can give birth to the revolutionaries and the resolutionaries who will bring an end to our enemy. So this is what we're dealing with. And we'll finally read a specific section talking about, once again, dealing with Auset and the child of Auset. And there's a specific chapter in Kemet dealing with the spell of the sacred cat. And you'll see that sacred cat connected with Auset as well as Bastet and so forth. And what it says, and this is very poignant for the recent transitioning of Nana Akousia Boduaa, it says, Hail Ra. Ra is the creator, Ra-et is the creatress, and they function together. They are called in Yonkumpon and in Yonkuntong in the Akan tradition, and Odumare, Oshumare in the Yoruba tradition, and Da and Aida Puedo in the Vodun tradition. It says, Hail Ra, the creator, come to your daughter. A scorpion has stung her on a lonely road. Her cry has penetrated the heights of heaven and is heard along the path. The poison has entered into her body and circulates through her flesh. She has set her mouth against that poison. Verily, the poison is in her members. Come with your strength, Ra, with your fierce attack and with those red powers, and force the poison to be hidden before you. Behold, the poison has entered into all the members of this sacred cat, which is under my finger. Be not afraid, my daughter, my splendor, for I have set myself near you. I have overthrown the poison, which is in all the limbs of this sacred cat. O this sacred cat, your head is now the head of Ra, the master of the two lands, the smiter of the rebellious people. Your fear is in all lands, master of the living, master of eternity. Sacred cat, your two eyes are the eye of the master of the Akhu. The Arak, the sacred disc on the head of the sovereign, who illuminates the two lands with his eye and illuminates the face of the path of darkness. Sacred cat, your nose is the nose of Tahuti, the twice great, the master of Kimenu, the chief of the two lands of Ra, who puts breath into the nostrils of every person. Sacred cat, your ears are the ears of Neb Erjer, the divinity who hearkens to the voice of all Akurakanyafurai people when they appeal to him and weighs words or judges in all the earth. Sacred cat, your mouth is the mouth of Atem, the master of life, the uniter of creation, who has caused the union of creation. He will deliver you from the poison. And so she makes her transition, but because of the love and connection she has with the community, because of the great work she did in the community, because of what she manifested in the community. She's accepted into the realm of the Nana Akousia, the Egungun, the Kuvita. She's accepted by the Abosom, the Orisha, the Vodou, the Arusi, and she becomes empowered. She becomes vested with the power of a purified, illuminated ancestry, one of the Akut, one of the illuminated ones. When we talk about the Aku and Akut in ancient Kemet, defined as the shining or illuminated ones, and they are associated with stars. In reality, when you have someone who's powerful and vibrant and in harmony with divine order, their spirit body, the life force energy moving through their spirit body generates a radiance. They have a powerful kahibit or a powerful aura, a radiant aura. When they make their transition, that radiance is manifest through their spirit body. They become like stars in the night sky. They're radiant, they're shining, they're illuminated. They're Aku if male and Akut if female. Illuminated, shining one. They can show a path through the dark. When the stars are in the sky, they light a path in the darkness to show others which way to go, because they do not injure themselves in the darkness because they can see. And she becomes one of the Aku because of that radiance, because she's vested with the power of Ra and Ra'et, because she lived in harmony with divine order in her sincerity to uplift our people. She gave birth to these concepts that would revolutionize and resolutionize the minds of our people. This is the child of Essi, Akousia Boduaa, with that executive authority. And she will wield that executive authority as she settles in Asamando, the ancestral realm, for those in her direct blood circle and those who are connected. So this is an Akan perspective of the life and contribution Nana Akousia Boduaa, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing. If anybody has a comment, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line so we can see that your hand is raised. Of course, if you are in the chat room, you can comment in the chat room. Of course, you have to log in as a user in the chat room in order to connect in the chat room. But if you have a question or a comment, of course, you can hit the number 1 on the phone line so that we can see that your hand is raised. And we have a call on the phone line, Michiawo, on the phone line number 3081.
Question. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I was wondering if you know the date for her funeral, Kwesi.
Okay, I did hear that there was going to be a memorial service January 23rd at Howard University, and I would have to check the time for that, but I did hear that today. So, and I'm sure someone has posted it on Facebook, probably in an event on Facebook. So check that out. But what I heard so far was January 23rd at Howard University.
She was born on the Monday or the Thursday, because this is a special broadcast. I'm not sure if she was born on Thursday or Monday.
She was connected to Monday, but of course, if, like in our Akhan culture, of course, if you're born prior to sunrise and it's really the previous night, so she would be an Adwoa or an Essi, but Adwoa, Essi is the same divinity. It is Auset. Auset operates with the moon. She's called Adwoa when she operates in connection with the sun. She's called Essi, so she's governed by that divinity. And we just decided to do this broadcast on Yauda, Thursday night, Yada. One of the reasons being is because there are two Earth Mother divinities. There's Asase Afua and Asase Ya in the Akan tradition. Some people were under the assumption that there was just one Earth Mother divinity, and the Fanti call her Asase Afua and the Asante and others call her Asase Ya. There are 2 female Earth divinities, Asase Afua and Asase Ya. And of course, we have shown who they are in ancient Kemet, Asase Nebetepet and Asase Nebetet. And we showed their actual images. These are the same 2 Earth Mother divinities. the wives of Atem and Kepra. But Asaseyafu is dealing with the fertile earth mother. Asaseya is dealing with the quote-unquote barren earth mother, but specifically that aspect of earth where we talk about this great mother does not refuse a corpse, meaning we bury our deceased in that Asaseya. So she takes and receives the remains of our deceased who transition. And that physical body becomes a shrine. It becomes the best shrine, the most potent shrine for the ancestral spirit. So Asaseya, Ya is Yada or Thursday, and of course today is Yada or Thursday. But when someone makes their transition, we don't talk about a decay. Our people have the capacity through mummification, ritual practice to preserve the body in such a manner that thousands of years later when they discover these, or break into these tombs and so forth, it's as if the person was just mummified because we had that procedure that they still have not been able to replicate to this day. But we don't talk about a decay. We talk about a crystallization. The body doesn't deteriorate, so to speak, but it begins to slow down so that it can become crystallized. It becomes fossilized and becomes crystallized. And then it's preserved. So it becomes a crystal. It becomes a mineral, so to speak. It becomes the greatest ancestral shrine for that ancestral spirit. And this is why we preserve the body in that crystalline form. So now it becomes an ancestral shrine for the person who made their transition. So when we go to the cemetery, go to the tomb and so forth, for libation, we go to that space and we draw that ancestral there to communicate and so forth. So that's one of the reasons we have to broadcast on the day, the Yada, or the day of Asaseya.
Okay. I appreciate you did this broadcast for the elder, the great Miss Welsing, because a lot of people at times have been woken up for her work over the years, and it's nice that that brought this information to a better, proper ancestral look of her life and why she even write the book, the title, The Ice Papers, which was called Auset. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Absolutely. Cool. We appreciate the call. And we see in the chat room that Mirase for that. So someone posted, it will be from the memorial service, will be from 11 o'clock, 3 o'clock on January 23rd at the Crampton Auditorium. So Mirase for posting that information, and we'll be able to share that. You can share that online, share that, on different social media sites. Okay, and we're just checking the chat room right quick. Just want to make sure we didn't miss anything there. And we have another call on the phone line. Ichiawa on the phone line, number 7574. You had a question or a comment?
My name is Adia, and I just actually got to tune in like around 8:37, and I just wanted to thank you for the information. I love how you correlated the two together. You said that they had the same birthday.
Right.
Mama Francis.
Right. You're talking about the day of the week.
Mhm. Yeah.
Right. So she was connected. So if she was Akhan, she would have been child of the Abosom, Etsy, or Adwoa. Because of we checked the birthdays in Texas, day of the week, and so forth, and that's why we were able to make the connection.
Yeah, that's deep. I really enjoyed the call, and I thank you for inviting me.
Mirase, we appreciate you tuning in. And the key here is that the information is going to be in alignment because she is who she is. She is an ancestress now. She's moving towards that level of one of the Nananom Unsumanfo, one of the Akut and so forth, but she manifests who she is. And quite naturally, when we look at her life, look at her legacy, look at her contribution, it's going to manifest the energy of the Yabosom that governs her. So all we have to do is pay attention and be discerning, engage that critical examination as she brought forth and so forth, to be able to articulate and properly contextualize what we were witnessing and what we will continue to be nourished from. Because this is not, when we talk about a legacy, we're not just talking about someone setting up a museum or, having some website where you can download some speeches and things like that. She would still be impacting, of course, her direct blood circle, the people who are still in her family, those children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, nieces, nephews, and so forth, and cousins. She still will impact them. Her work will live through them. Her direct connection. And they pour libation and communicate directly with her and bring the messages from her, from the ancestral realm, into the community. People who are connected to her like that and they have observances, ancestral observances, they will be able to tell you, Nana Akousia Boduaa, she said today, and had this information today about what's going on today. So you won't only have to look back at the speeches that she left for us or the publications that she left for us, but in real time today, things that will be taking place in the future, events that manifest, analysis that she will provide. She will be able to provide that still from the ancestral realm and speak through her direct blood clan members and so forth, and they will be able to bring that message as well. And then she will empower them and inspire them and guide them to engage the same process that she engaged so that they can delve deep into that root, that primordial water, that wisdom, to draw forth that information so they can bring it forth in their own fashion as well. So that's a living legacy. It's not static, but it's dynamic. It's constant. It's consistent. Okay, on the phone line, Michiawo number 6254. You had a question, comment?
Hello. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yes, we can.
I'm sorry, I'm sick. I'm on Monday born too, and I know it's supposed to be cool water, energy, calm or whatever, but a lot of times I'd be hyped up. So I'm just wondering where do I get all that extra energy from, and how do I cool it down?
Okay, so you were saying that you were born on a Monday, Joda. You do have that connection to the cool, deep waters and so forth, but sometimes you can get into a extra kind of rage, so to speak, aroused up, so to speak.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not inconsistent because, yes, the ocean, everything is born from the ocean, right? Whether it's the earth itself, the land masses themselves, or us within the amniotic fluid, which is that primordial ocean within the womb of the Great Mother. However, the oceans are not just receptive because the oceans become, quote-unquote, enraged, and they can roar and they can level entire cities and level entire towns. And it's nothing necessarily wrong with that either. So water is cool and receptive, but it can be very devastating. It could blanket everything. People often associate fire destroying everything, but water puts out fire. So water can be more powerful than the fire and more, quote-unquote, destructive than the fire. It's not inconsistent with the energy, but what you want to do is properly that free flow of energy. So therefore, you're born on Monday, you're connected to Adwoa, your Okra is a child of Nana Adwoa. So when you engage that divinity that dwells in the head region on a consistent basis, you're consistently aligning yourself with that force of nature. You'll know the difference between the misuse or getting out of alignment with that energy. For example, people who are children of Nana Adwoa, yes, they can be receptive. They can, be healers, healeresses, all of that. They can get out of alignment with that energy, and instead of going deep down down into the root, Joe, into the coolness, Joe, so they can beget, Joe, and they can release the sound vibrations that can heal. They can become deep in shallow waters, and they become deep and depressed, or deep and anxious and full of anxiety. That kind of major depressive disorder, so to speak, because they're underwater, but not in a harmonious way. They're not diving in the water to, grab a sacred mineral to bring it back to the surface. They're flailing in the water, and they're drowning, so to speak. So you want to live in harmony with the environment. Just like someone who's swimming, they can be drowning or they can be swimming. So you want to live in harmony with the energy that you're surrounded by. So but the key is when you invoke Nana Adwoa at that AKRADINBOSOM shrine, and we have some articles and videos dealing specifically with that, of course, going into detail about the AKRADINBOSOM shrine, but when you invoke this divinity, she will give you that kind of direction so you won't get out of alignment with her energy. If you have every now and then there are ritual processes to realign you with your craft. So you can utilize that water for its best benefit. The water can nourish and, rejuvenate you before water can drown you, depending on how you interface with the water. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So my goals would be mostly on the cool level, right?
Say it one more time.
I'm sorry. My goals would be mostly on the cool level, like not so much like fiery all the time.
No, it's not that you have to. It's not a situation where you have to conform. There's some people who are children of Adwoa, where they're more on that cool side, and they're more so like healers, healeresses, and so forth. But then there are some people who are children of Adwoa who are protectors. Adwoa is the same as ODWIRA or Odwira in the Yoruba tradition, the wife of Obatala. And when they talk about, the Ogboni society and different things, she becomes that stern grandmother who protects the people. Once the woman goes beyond midnight, once they go beyond, the end of the menstrual period, we call it Twabra in the Akan tradition, the end or the the cutting off or the ending of the Obra state or the cycle of, years of menarche and so forth, and they're no longer menstruating. Then they go towards that situation where in the Yoruba tradition they're more susceptible to the energy of the AYIE or the so-called Iyami. In the Akan tradition, AYIE is misnomered when they call it, witchcraft and all this other nonsense. It simply means that they have a greater capacity to wield influence over the ancestresses and ancestors that they have connected to them, that they have brought into the world by nature of who they are. So they have the capacity to wield influence over them, and some of them utilize that influence in a fiery fashion to protect the community. Protect the community against child molesters, protect the community against thieves, protect the community against rapists and murderers and disorder and so forth, regulating order. So when Adwoa has a regulatory function in creation, and she deals with the continuity of civilization, that means maintaining regulatory order. Some people maintain regulatory order through nourishment. You nourish yourself through those deep waters, rejuvenate yourself through those deep waters, cleanse yourself through those deep waters. That's rejuvenation, similar to feeding yourself and getting enough water in your system so you can stay, cleansed and rejuvenated. But then some people, of course, facilitate that continuity of civilization or maintenance of regulatory order through destroying disorder that would otherwise upset the integrity of the divine order. And they utilize that water to wash away debris, destroy bacterial cells, destroy toxins, wash away toxins, get rid of criminals and so forth. So whatever side you're on, some people are more so on the rejuvenation side, the nourishing side of the water. Some people are on the side that they utilize that water to flood or, wipe away all of the criminality, all of the disease, all of the toxins. So both are perfectly fine. You find out what side you're on and what you're more drawn to because it's rooted in your own craft, and then you live in harmony with that. This is what we deal with.
Okay, so I'm probably more on the side of destroying stuff, destroying disorder, I guess.
Right, and you just think about it. You utilize water to clean your house, clean different things. There's water. The body is 70+% water, washing away debris, washing away even the cells that are destroyed by the immune and lymphatic system. And that water washes those, dead cells away and the toxins away to force them out of the body, even to drown these cells and so forth, so that you can maintain your integrity, so you can maintain the integrity of your system. So that's all part of the functioning of Adwoa. You can use water to destroy, while somebody may be a child of Abina, the divinity that governs the planet Abina, so-called Sekhmet, Sechima. They use fire to destroy because that's their nature. That's their, the nature of their energy complex that was assigned to them. But either way, there's an expansive and contractive pole to any energy complex. You have the expansive pole, the contractive pole, and the contractive pole is dealing with that, impression of order, stamping on order the parameters within which things must operate. And then the expansion aspect is bringing those things in that will allow the person to expand and develop and incorporate things that they need to move forward. But then you have that contractive aspect to put the brakes on certain expansion to make sure things don't get out of order. So whether it's the expansive and contractive aspects of water, you see water recede, but you can see water expand and flood things. But then it will recede. Fire can expand, but it can also, contract. So every aspect of an energy complex manifests those polarities.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay. And Yenny, I say that. We appreciate the call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So it looks like, just want to make sure we didn't miss any comments in the chat room. Okay. So, and that was all of the calls. So we're going to end it here. We just wanted to do this special broadcast in honor of Nana Akousia Boduaa, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, to bring some, insight from our perspective, from an Akhan perspective, on the great work that she put forward, impacting our people around the world. So again, Yerase, we thank you for tuning in to this broadcast, and Yebeshi Abio, we will meet again.